Bukharan Synagogue, the Beit Knesset Agdol, Leidat Bukharim, Baba Tama Synagogue, the famous great Bukharan synagogue in Jerusalem, which is obviously connected to Bukharan community, and very, very famous one in the Bukharan neighborhood, respectively. Now, I believe it was founded in the year 1895, this synagogue was, and it was very much connected to, it was a part of a state of Rabbi Baba, someone of the name, I'll quote his name, Rabbi Baba ben Rav Yaakov Tama, that was his name. He was a great rabbi that came from Bukhara, respectively, over there, and he would build a Beit Knesset, I think, from the Bukharian streets over there. I think it happens to be the Yecheskel street in the Bukharian neighborhood. This is obviously in the center of Jerusalem. Let's speak about a little bit for a minute with regards to the Bukhari neighborhood. We've actually visited there on this channel on various occasions before. We'll just say something just for a quick minute about the place. It's a neighborhood in the center of Jerusalem. It was established by Bukharian Jews of the old Yishuv, and I think there was various other communities from modern-day Afghanistan and Iran would actually be associated there. I think it belonged to the early Jewish neighborhoods built outside the old city of Jerusalem as part of a process, I believe, which began in the 1850s. Obviously, nearly all the residents nowadays happen to be ultra-Orthodox Jews. Now, this quarter borders the Tel Arza on the west, which is obviously a Haredi neighborhood of Ezrat Torah, so on and so forth. Also, the Shmuel and Avi neighborhood. Also, an Arzeh Habira. This is, I believe, on the east part over there, and we visited there before. And also Geula neighborhood over there. Currently, the chief rabbi of the Bukharan quarter is Rabbi Shlomo Kassin, also known as Rabbi Sami, very, very popular rabbi. And obviously, it started 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. It was Chovevei Tzion at that point in time, very in the early 1890s. That was around the time period, let's just say, where the Baba Tama Synagogue, I think, was built in the name 1894, and it was named for the Bukharan Jew who actually financed it. Interesting enough, and there was various other houses that were built at that point in time. Maybe we'll do a separate video of. Let's just say, of the Bukharan neighborhood at a later stage. Let's continue about the synagogue. Now, it will be built over there, inside, we said before, the Cheska Road over there in the central Jerusalem. And I think I'll say it in Hebrew. לפי מדריך ישראל חדש, ריחוץ הפנים של בית כנסת, אינו שומע על הסגנון הבוכרי. ומלבד הפרוכת עשויה מלאכת רקמת בוכרית, Meshi Rekum B'chotzi it had like a golden strings to it, like of I believe a silk embroidered, if I'm not mistaken. Yeteh Harihut B'signot Acherim. Aron Kodesh, it was obviously a beautiful Aron Kodesh over there. B'signon Mizrachi Europa, it was, and Bima B'signon Artzis Rial, and I think they tried to model it maybe, or something was connected to the old, let's say, Sfat synagogue, which we've spoken about before, Sfat being one of the four holy cities of Israel. Okay, synagogue specials. So obviously, I think there was Rabbi Bloomberg, who was an artist. I think he was, I think the wall itself was done with a drawing of his. And remember, it was bordering the Shchunat Mea Shearim, the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of Mea Shearim over there at that point in time. There's actually, I think, right next door to it, the Ohel Yitzchak synagogue, I think obviously belonging to the Hasidut Chabad organization of Mea Shearim over there. So there was many great rabbis in that vicinity over there. I think they would also come inside and spend time in the Baba Tama Synagogue in very, very early years, including great rabbis like Rabbi Yosef Dov, who was a very famous rabbi. There was Rabbi Avram Noach Gerboz, another great rabbi we've spoken before, the author of the Minchat Avram book and the Har Ephraim. Avram Gorbitz, Rabbi Avram Gorbitz, another great rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva, I think of Gateshead he happens to be, if I'm not mistaken. Rabbi Simcha Kessler, another great rabbi of yesteryear. I think he became the first rabbi of Kiryat Sefer. Rabbi Chaim Shlomo Libovitz, another great rabbi. I think he was a rabbi of Rosh Yeshiva Ponovitz, if I'm not mistaken. Ponovitz Yeshiva, the famous Ponovitz Yeshiva. And many of the rabbis would actually come there. It was a splendid synagogue. Remember, we've spoken about the most famous Mosai synagogue also. I think what's interesting, I think they discovered at a later stage there was a Giza on the roof. I'll say it now in Hebrew over here. It says, Kamo Ken Bishnat 2007, the year 2007, Tzat Baliat Gag, I think on top of the roof of the Beit Knesset, there was a Gniza, Katzmim, Rabbim, V'Nidirim, Shel Mekubalei Yerushalayim. Many of the great Kabbalists of Jerusalem wrote various different teachings, I think including Lashem, Rabbi Shlomo Eliashiv, one of the great rabbis of his time. He was a Baal HaLashem. Also, I think Rab Chaim Shaul HaKohen Dwek, also his teachings and writings, was a famous Kabbalist. He was a Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Rehovat Nahar, if I'm not mistaken, and famous Kaf HaChaim, the great book which was written from Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, one of the great rabbis from Iraq, respectively. And he wrote various important teachings on Orach Chaim, on Yuridea, also respectively, which we talked about before. Now, who are the rabbis of this famous synagogue, the central Bukharian synagogue over there of the Baba Tama? I think there were great Bukharan rabbis actually connected. I think most notably Rabbi Moshe Yitzchakov HaKohen. He, I think, was a rabbi of the Bukharan community between the years 1922 to 1943. And he obviously would come from Eretz Yisrael, but could get prominent position until he passed away. This would have been Rabbi Moshe HaKohen Yitzchakov himself. Was born 1865. He lived about 78 years. He was a chief rabbi of the Bukharan community of Israel and of the Bukharan neighborhood. I think he was Rosh Yeshiva also of Midrash Shlomo. Hopefully we'll be able to speak about this yeshiva at a later stage. Now, another rabbi that will be a head rabbi of this place was Rabbi Ben Sion HaKohen Rabin, who was also the head rabbi of the Bukharan community of Tel Aviv, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he was rabbi of the Beit Knesset from 1945, possibly short vicinity after Rabbi Yitzchak HaKohen was Rabbi Ben Sion HaKohen Rabin, we've spoken about on various occasions before. He passed away 30 years ago in 1995. He was born in 1911. He was a rabbi of the Bukharan congregation of Tel Aviv, respectively. Very, very famous rabbi. We haven't spoken about that many Bukharan rabbis, maybe about a dozen rabbis, but he himself, I think, was in the yeshiva of Shlomo Yehuda Leib Eliazarov. If I'm not mistaken, he was connected to Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi Herzog, Rabbi Ben Zion Mechai Uziel, Rabbi Ovadia. He actually received the smicha from Rabbi Ovadia Hadaya, the great rabbi did. So he was very, very much great rabbi. He was appointed ahead. He was working in Tel Aviv. He was a shochet also, and took on various importances. I think he was appointed the chief rabbi of the Bukharan community of Tel Aviv in the year 1966. He himself, I think his son, Rabbi Pinchas HaKohen Rabin, would serve as rabbi of Tel Aviv later on, and he passed away in November 2019. His grandson is also Rabbi Ben Zion, and Rabbi Pinchas HaKohen Rabin. I think currently they serve as judges in the Petach Tikva Rabbinical court, and Rabbi Meir Rabin, I think, is also Rosh Yeshiva, and I think also Rabbi Abraham Salim also is an Israeli Rosh Yeshiva also, and he's got various different famous son-in-laws, including Rabbi Eliyahu Zirkov and Rabbi Yaakov Abadi, Rosh Yeshiva of Met Yaakov in Jerusalem, and the Ma'or HaTorah, respectively, which I think we also spoke about before, if I'm not mistaken, based in Makor Baruch. So these were two gigantic rabbis. Rabbi Moshe Yitzchakov HaKohen, another great rabbi who mentioned about, he was beforehand. He was obviously the rabbi of the Baba Tama Synagogue over there. And I think many people will talk about the great place of synagogue it was over there. I think there was Rabbi Yechiel Shlomo will actually say about him, about how he was a great cantor also of this synagogue, the Baba Tama, in the Bukharan neighborhood, especially in the high holy days. A great rabbi. It was packed, the synagogue was. Many people would come there. They cried. There was outpour of tremendous kavanah, tefillot over there, and there was great amounts of tefillah over there. How wonderful, his the blowing of the shofar was on those specific days, especially in Yom Kippur, the Musaf prayer on Yom Kippur in of itself. I think Rabbi Yitzchakov was actually buried in Mount of Olives in 1943. There were many great rabbis at that point in time, or the Bukharan community, that would especially learn from Rabbi Yitzchakov. I think maybe they were connected also to synagogue, including Rabbi Yaakov Chai Pan Hasuf, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Shlomov, Rabbi Maman Sulmani, Rabbi Gabriel Chacham, Rabbi Netanel Eliyahu, Rabbi Aaron Kazioff, Rabbi Moshe Kazioff, Rabbi Betzalel Rafal Cohen, Rabbi Hizkiah Katanov. These are really great rabbis. Rabbi Sion Zirkov, Rabbi Michael Chai Zirkov. They were very great rabbis at that point in time. Rabbi Shimon Chacham. There was many great rabbis that were really absolutely incredible within regards to. So this was a very famous synagogue, which we've spoken about more. There's actually an interesting article they actually say, I think we're going to use two interesting, so just going on a bit more about the Baba synagogue itself. It's part of an excellent article from the Diarna.org website. It talks about the large story of the Bukharan quarter, that I think it was ever since the arrival of Yosef Mammon, who was a Sephardic rabbi, who had become the spiritual religious leader of the Bukharan community, a notion was infused into the Bukharian society of necessity to desire to return to Eretz Yisrael. Now we're going back in 1860s with the establishment of the community in central West Jerusalem. There was affluent Bukharan Jews at that point in time. There was establishment of the Hovei Tzion Association, which we spoke about before, especially I think 1890, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was actually formed at that specific point in time. So that would actually inject at that point in time over there. The Tama Synagogue would be built, promoting Asian culture of Judaism. It was a Central Asian carpet lined interior. The synagogue obviously is still in use today, as we mentioned before. I'm just using the article over here. It's also called the Bukharan Quarter, the Bukharim Quarter. Obviously neighborhood in central Jerusalem. We talked about in 1860s it grew to become a pan-Persian Jewish area, hosting Jewish communities from Iran, Afghanistan, and Bukharian Jews. The creation of the neighborhood was part of a larger process of Jewish areas being established in Jerusalem outside the confines of the old city. We talked about Yosef Maman, the brilliance about him, how he actually came in. He was a Sephardic rabbi initially from Morocco, but had resettled in Tzfat to teach at yeshiva. I think we spoke about him. He traveled to various Jewish communities. He was a Shluchei Rabbanan. He raised a lot of funds for Eretz Yisrael. He reached Bukhara, and Rabbi Maman would establish a Jewish community of Bukhara, and he saw that he would try to inject great Torah, halacha inside the place. He would go on to become the spiritual leader of the Bukharan Jewish community over there, providing them with the Sephardic religious rites that replaced their old Persian rites at that point in time. The utilization of such rites was a result of isolation from surrounding Jewish populations, specifically from the Bukhara Emirates' closed-door policies, I think. And Rabbi Maman would establish many parts of his teachings and was a support for Bukharan Jews to visit and return to Eretz Yisrael. I think it's reported over, we're going back a bit over here with regards to the community and the synagogue. As early as 1827 until 1860, many Bukharan Jews were making multi-month visits to Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, but not settling in the land and opting to return to Bukhara. These trips would establish the groundwork for the first true settlement of Bukharan Jews in Jerusalem in 1868, when from Russian Turkestan would make the trek to the Holy Land. Like many of the Russian Ashkenazi counterparts, 7 members of the Bukharan community would form a Hovei Tzion association over there of communities of Nukhara, Samarkand, and Tashkent. I think the association brought around 40 houses northwest of Mea Shearim, an area that would become the Bukharan Quarter, which would be named Rehovot, I think, originally. And much can be said. I think there was Moorish arches alongside heavy utilization of Magen Davids and Hebrew inscriptions inside of the buildings. Homes were typically large, possessing usual 2 stories and a courtyard. The quarter as a whole was initially very affluent, being filled with Bukharan Jews who amassed wealth from mercantile, cotton, tea trades in Central Asia. The original population began to dissipate in the early 20th century and gradually grew to become a Sephardi, ultra-Orthodox dominant area, with most of them houses, synagogues being utilized by population as well. I think David Tama was an affluent Bukharian Jewish merchant who was known for his financing of early cultural projects in the Bukharan Quarter. The Tama Synagogue, historical and cultural elegance can be contributed to David Tama's funding, was named Baba Tama after David Tama. However, I think it was Rabbi also. Baba means a gate in Aramaic, was actually supposed to be in reference to the word grandfather, Saba, in Hebrew, thus referencing both David's age and his grandfatherly status in funding many early projects in the Bukharan Quarter. While not confirmed, I'm reading the article here from the Dayarna.org website over here. It is believed that the street of synagogue, Rochav David. Hi, yeah, everyone. We just did a video over here within regards to the famous Bukharian neighborhood, the famous synagogue of Baba Tama. It was a special edition over here. So I had to cut the video short. We're hoping going to say more within regards to the Bukhari neighborhood. But please, everyone, subscribe to the channel. We're a community here, and wish you all a fantastic day. So enjoy and have a great day, friends. Take care.